That time, the time you have all been waiting for. It is another rendition of Mr. Ray Real Estate. Welcome to another one. How's everybody doing out there? Let's see if my video is working today. Is the video working? Yeah, that's what we're gonna find out. Let's see. It is working. Hey. Let's get this party started. Ladies and gentlemen, sound check, microphone check. You hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
All right, let's go. So today I want to talk about, I'm actually going to change it up a little bit. So I thought it's very important at this time to talk a little bit about one of the aspects of landlording that is not very pretty. It's one of those things that you have to do, but you don't like doing it. It's just a bad deal all the way around when you eventually have to get down to the point when you have to evict someone, okay? And so I want to talk to today how that process works in Oklahoma, how it goes through what's going on with COVID, the CARES Act. I want to talk you through all of that, show you all the notices, everything that you have to do as a landlord before you can evict someone in the state of Oklahoma. It's probably the same way in the other states. You know, you might have a little different slant on it here and there, but for the most part, it's going to be the same. So let's talk about the eviction process. First of all, need to make sure everybody stays muted and keep your camera off during the call. Work over in the chat section if you want to talk about things, and then give me feedback. Nobody ever gives me feedback, so I guess I'm doing all right. You keep showing up, I keep sharing good stuff, so hopefully, ladies and gentlemen, you are gaining some good experience from my experience that I share with you. So before we get started, I do have a public service announcement because I do have a few new people on, and I haven't had an opportunity to just go over some of the rules and regulation as it comes to this Zoom meeting and to just working with Mr. Ray, period, all right? So this is my business. You know, I am a landlord. I am the CFO, I'm the CEO, I'm the HNIC, I'm everything in Juice Property. So this is my business. So I need for you all to understand that I have certain things that I can and I can't do. And so let's just go through a few things, just make sure we got clarification from a PSA standpoint. First of all, let me reiterate again and again and again, my office hours for you, ladies and gentlemen, is 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, period. Unless it's an emergency. Don't call me, don't text me, don't do nothing. But during these hours, you got me free reign. So that's enough time for you to use me. If you wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning and you got something you want to tell Mr. Ray, you need to wait till 8 o'clock for you let me know. And if it's 8 or 9 o'clock at night, no, don't do it. Because if you do it once, I might forgive you. If you do it twice, I won't. Oh, Mr. Ray, you so hard. No, I have a life. You have a life. Respect mine and I'll respect yours. That's all I'm going to say on that. Do not, I repeat, do not forward the link to this meeting to anyone for any reason, period, unless you get permission from me. And guess what? You won't get permission from me. The only way somebody should be a part of this meeting is that I invite them. So if you want to get somebody involved in this, you say, hey, this would be nice. You need to come here, Mr. Ray. Great. You give them my phone number. You have them text me, call me, whatever. I'll get them signed up. If you are on scholarship, that means if you're on here and you haven't paid and you don't pay, I'll let you on here for free. You're here as part of the small group. You're here because you're a family, a friend of mine. Then you must do the homework without option. There's no, I ain't have time, Mr. Ray. I'm busy. I got things to do. Well, you know what? So do I. And if you are not willing to at least put in the time to do the homework, then this is not for you. You're not committed to this. So therefore, I will not allow you to be part of this class because you wasted my time and yours. You just want to be around, hang around, but you don't want to do the work. This is a hard business, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm simply trying to teach you commitment to make sure that you're doing the homework so that you can be successful in your real estate adventures. If you're paying customer, you're not required to do the homework, but it would be to your benefit to do it, because that's the only way you're going to learn and grow and get better is practice. Did I say practice? You're talking about practice. Yeah, Mr. Ray, I'm talking about practice. You must practice. But you know what? If you're paying me, it's your money. You don't have to do it. Free. I love you. Keep paying me. I'm going to be there to help you and support you either way it goes. If you feel like you got it down, and some of you all have been with me over a year or so, and so you got a lot of this homework down, I'm not giving you a hard time. But if I introduce something new that you haven't seen, you need to make sure that you do that homework too. It's not required, but it'd be good. And if you, for some reason, you're on this call and you missed this meeting, it's up to you to request a copy from me. It's not my job to make sure, oh, I know so-and-so missed today. Miss Lila, you missed? Oh, I need to make sure I get, no, I'm not doing that. Take responsibility. If you miss, you say, hey, Mr. Ray, you need to send me that. All right, I'll do that for you. All right, any questions on the public service announcement? All right, let's get into it. Pretty straight and dry, ain't it? Let's go, baby. Let's talk about the eviction process. Now, again, eviction is just one of those things that, you know, you don't want to do it. And so it's just a bad process for everybody. But one of the ways that I found out that I don't have to go through the eviction process is that I am very, very selective in the tenants that I allow in my property. Because if I do my job correctly, I should never, ever have to evict someone. But there are times which you have to do it. And so, you know, I try to be fair. I try to be the right thing. But, you know, in this landlording business, you can't be friends. You can't be jolly wally. You got to do things right. But you have to be firm also. So let me talk to you just briefly before we get into the actual eviction process. I have some golden rules that I follow. And these golden rules, if you'll adhere to them, they'll help you also, because I learned over the years, these are just some things that you must do. Number one, you got to treat people right, right? You cannot act like you, Mr. Landlord, you got to do everything I say and do. No, you treat people the way you want to be treated. Because I found out if you treat people good, they'll treat you back. Now, some people, they just scoundrels, they ain't gonna do right, but anyway, but I'm not talking about those. But if you do what you're supposed to do and you treat people right, most of the time they'll treat you right also. Here's a biggie. I love you, family. I love you, friends, but I will never, ever allow you in one of my properties. Why? Because it's going to go wrong. It's going to go bad. And when it does, now you fractured the family, you fractured the friendship. Just don't do it. I have the same thing about, about loaning money. I don't loan money to family and friends anymore. You know what I do? I just give it to them because I don't want to have an expectation that I'm going to get it paid back and they don't pay it back. So I'd rather, here, if you need some help, here, I'll just give it to you. So, Mr. Ray, I'm not in the loan business. Every now and then somebody says, hey, Mr. Ray, give me a loan. Okay, what do you need it for? And then I go through the, you know what? If $200, $300 here, just take it, give, gratis, don't come back no more though, all right? That's it. But never lease to family and friends. Be firm but fair. That the second part of that, being fair, means that your word is your bond. Whatever you say, do it. If you tell them you're going to fix something within the next 24 hours, make sure you do it. If you're not going to do it, then you need to make sure you let them know. You need to give them ETA on when you're going to have things repaired and things like that. It's just the way to do it. Now, when it comes to collecting your rent, oh, Mr. Ray, I ain't got it today. I can give it to you. No. We're just going to have to abide by the terms. My rent is due on the 1st. If it's late after the 4th, on the 5th, you're getting a notice. I'm going to be fair with you, but I'm going to be firm. Now, I understand people have situations, things come up, and most of my tenants know that if you've been with me, you know, if something comes up, hey, you know, I work with you, but every month, nah, we're not doing that. That's not what we do. We're not doing that. And then again, baby, run it like a business. This is not take care of the books, make sure you're doing the paperwork, you're dotting the I's, you're closing the T's, you're doing all of that. Make sure you run it like a business and you will be successful. So those are my golden rules. So let's get into this whole deal of eviction. So you've done everything that you can to get this person to pay rent and they won't pay it. All right. First of all, I want to look at some of the items that's in the Oklahoma Landlord-Tenant Act. That's what governs the relationship between a tenant and a landlord in the state of Oklahoma. If you have not read that, that's a document that you need to read. So there's two reasons that you can be evicted from your property in the state of Oklahoma. First one, pretty straight and dry, you don't pay your rent. If you don't pay your rent, the landlord has a right to get that property back. Now, we're going to talk about what's going on right now because there's a moratorium that says that you can't evict anybody for rent due to COVID. All right, we need to talk about that. The second reason is a violation of the terms of the lease agreement. Okay, so basically two reasons, but inside of there, there's a lot of stuff, and we need to talk through some of that. So failure to pay rent, violation of term, or what's the violation of the term, Mr. Ray? Well, on my lease, I said you can't have any pets, but then I come and show up, you got pets on my property. That's a violation of the terms of the lease agreement. Or if you over there destroying my property, that's a violation. You got 3 or 4 adults living over there, that's a violation. Anything that's a violation that's specifically expressly quoted in my lease agreement, you cannot do it. And then also the Oklahoma Landlord-Tenant Act has some things in there that the tenant also has to adhere to. But what about me, the tenant? Are there any things that protect me? Yes, there are some reasons that a tenant can go and get out of the lease. But normally it's the landlord trying to get the tenant out. So one of the reasons that, I just had a brain fart. One of the reasons that you can be removed from the property is failure to keep the property in good working condition, right? Tenant causes damage or destruction to the property. Tenant has pets on the property. These are all things that the tenant can do to violate the lease. And they can have, we talked about this, got additional people living in the unit that are not on the lease agreement. So those are all the things that I can have a tenant removed from my property, all right? And I got to tell you what the notice is you got to give in order to make that happen. Now, what about the landlord? Mr. Landlord, is there any way I can just break the lease and get out of the lease? Yeah, there are. One is failure to keep the property in good working condition, failure to provide heat, water, gas, electricity, all those main functional things. As a landlord, I am required to make sure that a tenant has that. Now, if something breaks down today, I don't have to run out there tonight and get it fixed. I have 2 to 3 days to get those things fixed. And that's according to the Landlord-Tenant Act. Again, failure to provide those things. The tenant has a right, if he notifies me in writing and I refuse to get these things fixed, then he can get out of the lease and supposedly he can get his deposit back, all that good stuff. All right. We got to talk through some of that. I know y'all got some questions. Let's say if I don't have one of those things fixed, the tenant can withhold the rent up to the amount of the repairs. Let's say my rent is $800. I don't come out and get the AC fixed. He calls AC guy to come out and fix it for $600. He can deduct that from the first month's rent, but he can't do that until he notifies me, gives me an opportunity to come out and fix it. I got so many days. If I don't fix it, then he can deduct it from the rent, okay? He or she. But the tenant must give me written notice of these repairs. He just can't say he called me or text me and I didn't come in. I got to have a certified notice. Mr. Ray, I'm putting you on notice. I'll need this stuff fixed. If you don't fix it in such and such a day, I'm going to deduct it from my rent. I said tenant van. The tenant can terminate the lease agreement if the repairs are not made. Okay. Any questions on that? I know I covered a lot there. Any questions?
Yes, Mr. Ray, I got a couple questions. The The first one was about the in kind of like the things the tenant can do to violate. You had something in there about an extra person living.
Additional adults living in the unit that are not on the lease.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to kind of get from the landlord's perspective why. Well, one, I mean, I think it might be hard to tell anyway, but two, from your perspective, as long as the rent and everything's being paid, why that might be a big deal. So in situations of, I mean, I don't know, somebody has like a significant other or something of that nature.
And they have to be added to the lease. That's the law in the state of Oklahoma. Every adult that lives at that property has to be on that lease. Now you can have people come by and stay, this and that, but when they're staying over there, their car is there, they got clothes in the closet. I mean, it's obvious that they live in there. That's a violation of the lease. But when you sign my lease, you said, these are the number of adults and these are the number of kids that are going to be in this unit. And that's it. That's the only ones that can live there.
Gotcha. And when they talk about written notice, is this like, I don't know, like an email suffice for that? Or is there
certified? You got to go and get a certified receipt that they received notice.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay. Any other questions?
I got one. So what if somebody wanted to house hack? Are you fine with them signing their name to the lease if they want to bring in roommates to live in your property?
Not in my property. We don't do Airbnb, VRBO. We ain't doing none of that. The only people that's going to be in that property, we ain't doing no house hacking in my house, right? So that's just me. Other people may allow it. These number of adults is what's on the lease. If you want to add somebody else to the lease, guess what? The rent's going up, right? The rent that I said is for that number of adults in there. If you add adults, I'm adding money to the rent.
All right, one last question.
Yep.
How often do you check up on your tenants by far for making sure these rules are being enforced?
I do not. For the most part, once a year, maybe I'll come in and check. Most time, if they're paying the rent, I don't really worry about them. If you ain't paying the rent, I'm all over you, baby. I'm over there like I Spy, I got my cameras out. I got GPS. I'm looking for you, baby. But if you paying your rent, you probably can get away with a lot with me. That's like I found old girl had this dog on my property. I don't know how long she had the dog on the property. I just happened to go by there because, I was in the neighborhood and look over the fence, there's a dog. Boom. Had I been checking, I probably would have caught it earlier. So normally I try to once a year because I like to go by and change filters, just take a look at the property. But some of my tenants been with me for 10 to 15 years. I don't never go to their house. Because all I got to do is drive by. I can see the house looks good. They're paying the rent. I have no need to go by. Any other questions? All right, keep moving. We'll still have some more time for questions as we go on. We got to get through a lot of stuff here. So landlords got to do their part of the contract, and the tenants have to adhere to their part of the contract. All right. So let's talk about the process. All right, so now my contract, my lease states the rent is due on the 1st. If you haven't paid it by the 3rd, if the 4th rolls around, you're late. And normally I will send you reminders. I'll text them, email them, whatever, and say, hey, didn't receive the rent. Most times say, oh, I'll get it to you on Friday, Mr. Ray. Fine, just add the $25. See you later. All right. But then if they keep telling me they're going to pay me the rent, when it gets to about like the 5th, on the day of the 5th, if I haven't received anything from them, I'm sticking a notice on their door. And if they don't respond to that, then I'm sending a certified notice, okay? So the process starts that I have to give the tenant 5 days notice. They call it a notice to quit, and it has to be certified mail. And I'm gonna show you an example of that here, of one I just sent. Then I have to go down. If they don't pay it after that 5 days expire, then I get to go down to the Oklahoma County and I file what they call a forcible entry and detainer at the Oklahoma County clerk's house. At the time that I file that, they will give me a date. It's normally, if I go down on the 10th, it's usually 10 days later that the judge will schedule a hearing. And then me and the tenant both are to show up at a hearing before the judge to talk about the case. I'm going to talk about, why I need to get this person out of my house. Why you want to get them out of your house, Mr. Ray? Because they ain't paid my rent. Tenant, have you paid the rent? Well, no, because he didn't do it. What? Did you pay the rent? Okay, that's all they want to know. But the judge is going to be looking to me. Did you follow the law? Did you get 5-day notice? Did you get certified mailing? Do you have return receipt? Did you have the correct language on the notice? All that stuff has to be good. If I didn't do my part, then when I get to the trial, he's going to say, we're going to drop this case, we're going to discontinue. You got to go back and make the right filing, okay? But then when we get to the day of the hearing, if the judge says, you didn't pay your rent, you owe this man rent, he can either give me possession at that time, which means that's when I say possession, that means I get my property back. Or he can delay it and say, I want you to give the tenant 3 or 4 days to move out, come back in 3 or 4 days. If they haven't moved out, then we can send the sheriff, okay? All right, any questions on that? The eviction process. I'm gonna take you through the whole process here, all the documents that I filed, the certified mailings, everything. Any questions on the process?
Yes, Mr. Ray, so this process can theoretically happen fairly quick. So like if it's like they don't pay you by the 4th, and so by the end of the month, you could potentially have them out.
Yes, potentially. So it normally works like this. So on the 5th, I issue the notice, and then on the 10th is the 5th day. So I've given them I mailed the notice. Then on the 10th day, then I can go down and file for my forcible entry into Turner. It normally takes a week for them to schedule that. So I'm probably looking at the 17th or 18th for the hearing, but you're right. I can usually get possession in that month if I file by at least the 10th of the month.
Huh. Interesting. Okay. And when you go in front of the judge, do you, because I mean, I hear judge and then I hear attorneys. Is it just you as an attorney?
I can go down myself, and I used to, but now I hire an attorney and he does it all. I pay him $250. He takes care of everything. Now I have to mail the notices and do all that, but he files everything down at the county clerk for me. He shows up down there on my behalf. Now I did have to go down there during COVID because they wanted the landlords there during COVID because there were some extenuating circumstances that they didn't want a lot of people out of their homes. So I'll tell you some horror stories about that deal. But I used to go down there and do it myself, but I stopped doing that because sometimes I wouldn't do the paperwork right, and then I would get it delayed, and I would be delayed, have to come back and refile. So I just started letting my attorney take care of it, and then I don't have to worry. I just send him the information. He gets everything on the docket. He'll call me and ask questions if he has any questions. If the tenant shows up, starts talking about, I didn't do this, do that, then he might ask me some questions. But other than that, usually the attorney goes down there, takes care of it. I get notification that I have possession of my property, and I just go get possession. Other questions? All right. All right, so let's go. Let me show you some of my documents. And you can ask questions while I'm going over to my documents. So let's talk about, first of all, the eviction moratorium. So during COVID, they have what they call the CARES Act. I just looked this on Legal Aid Online. So the moratorium is still in effect to October 3rd. So it's been almost a year and a half now. Some of these landlords have not received rent in over a year. I don't know how they're doing it, but they're not able to collect rent. And people just living there and not paying rent. Now, I don't know what's going to happen when this deal is over on October the 3rd. I know what's going to happen. I don't know. But anyway, people there's ways that you can get information about this all online. I'm not going to read through all this. There's stuff that you got to do, what you got to attest to, what you got to fill out, what you got to sign in order to go down to the court and get your eviction stopped. So this is information for those that are going to be evicted. So you can, let's see what this PDF says here. This looks like a form. So this is the eviction protection declaration. Let me blow this up. So I haven't seen this. I don't know what they was filling out. So you basically fill this out and determine whether you qualify. And if you meet all the qualifications, then your rent is going to be free for a while. Any questions on the moratorium? Questions? Okay, let's do this. So, all right, so first thing I said, you got to send a 5-day notice to quit. So here's what my notice to quit looks like. So I issued this on the 4th for this tenant. This is the address. I said you got 5 days. The rent was $1,100. So I tell them, here was the rent. On the 4th, there was a late fee. So you basically owe me the $1,100 plus the $25. And then the 5 days, excluding weekends, would be on the 12th on this one. So you got to take out the weekend. It's only working days that are the 5 days. So this one went to the 12th. You say 5 days was the 9th. Well, I had to give them extra days because it was over the weekend. So this is a copy of the certified mail that I'm going to send to the tenant to let them know that I'm about to serve eviction on you. Any questions on this document? Okay. Then after I send that, let's say I don't get a response. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell my attorney, I filed this 5-day notice, tenant did not respond. Okay. Well, Mr. Ray, what do you want to do? I want to evict. All right. So they say, okay, well, you got to, and this is only during the moratorium. There's two documents that I now have to sign that I didn't have to sign before. The first one is this declaration here. Make sure you guys see this declaration. Yeah. So this is a declaration to the court that says, and this is the address. It says that I am the plaintiff, the used property, and I'm filing this action due to non-payment of rent. And for this particular one, I was getting possession. And I'll tell you about this one. This lady, she's been in this house since I bought it. I've been trying to get her out since January. So, COVID hit. So that stopped all my eviction process. But during that time, the government actually paid her back rent, right? And so I couldn't evict her, but now it's got to the point where I wanted to evict her. So I basically gave her a 30-day notice that I wanted to evict. I didn't have to give 5 days. I have to give 30-day notice if I'm evicting for something other than rent. And so here where I got to notify the government. This action is not being filed because non-payment of rent. No. And then the other question, this is a biggie right here. Is this property subject to a mortgage? Yes. If I answer that yes, the next one is critical, because is this loan that you have on this property, is it backed by the CARES Act? And I said no. It's not a multifamily mortgage loan. I don't have a loan that this 4OT, whatever. All right. So they're saying if you got this kind of loan, you definitely can't evict it. Right. And it says, is this property covered by on the covered property under the CARES Act? And I said no. And I said, why is that? He said, well, you got to look, all these properties are covered right here. It means you cannot evict somebody, even give them a 30-day notice if they meet any of these qualifications. If they're on public housing, if they got a voucher, if they're elderly, if they're disabled, if they're any of this governmental stuff, they're getting assistance, housing grants, low income credit, any of these, you cannot evict them even if you give them the 30-day notice. So if the government has anything to do with this home, then you can't evict them. Luckily, all my homes are just conventional loans and have government has nothing to do with them. They're just from local banks. So I'm not covered, right? I don't have to worry about it. Let's see, I state that the resident has not provided me a declaration from everybody in the unit. So I don't know all the adults living in the unit, so I can't say whether any of those are on there. Any other adults that's living in that unit, I don't know if they have any of this. I didn't verify that. So they're saying, okay, well, you're declaring that you don't know that then, all right? Any questions on this document? You have to have this document to even get in the door. This one I just did. Any questions? All right, so there's another document you got to sign. It's called for military service. And this affidavit says, if this person is in the military, you can't evict them, all right? And so I had to sign an affidavit saying that this person is not in the military. Well, how do I know that? Because she declared to me that she's not in the military. So that's all I have to declare. As far as I know, she's not under the military. And how do I know she declared it? Any questions?
With all this documentation, did an attorney tell you about this, or did you
Yeah,
research?
this is my attorney. My attorney had me fill all this out. Remember, he goes to court for me, but I have to fill out all this document.
But for us starting out, I mean, I know that we have access through you, but I'm just saying, how do you go through the process when you first started, before you had an attorney and all this to do these?
I would go down to the county and I would get all the documents, and they would have examples on what you had to fill out. But again, during COVID, this stuff that we didn't used to have to do all this. This is new just for COVID. These two documents right here are just for COVID. Hopefully they'll go away and we don't have to do it anymore. But yeah, when you go down, they have all the documents down there at Oklahoma County for you to sign. This document and all the other documents. If you didn't have an attorney, they would still give you this document to fill out. Other questions? This is the part of landlording, again, that it's not this is not the pretty, sexy part of landlording. This is the tough part, and but it's a necessary part. Let's see, I showed you that. Okay, so here's a certified notice. So here's the envelope that I sent her. This is a 30-day notice. Remember I said, I'm not trying to get her out for non-payment of rent. I want her out of my property because I need to rehab the property. Ever since I bought this property in January, I haven't been able to rehab it because she's still in there, right? And so she refused to pay me rent. But when I show up for court, then the people there with the CARES Act pay her rent for her. Well, that was well and fine during COVID. Now I want my property, so I issued a 30-day notice. And this is what it looks like. So this is the envelope. This is the certified mailing receipt. And this is the document. There's two pieces that you got to fill out for certified mail. This is your receipt that you're going to get when you mail it, and you fill this part out right here. All right. Any questions? And then I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask, how long do you keep these records, or how long do you need to keep them?
I keep everything electronic. So I keep them forever, really. You're only required by law to keep 2 years plus current, and that's on taxes also. And this is the 30-day notice. This is what it looks like when in this envelope right here. This is the notice that's in there. And so it just tells, this is the day I'm putting right up front. This is me, this is my address. This is who I'm going to be evicting from this property. So you see, I gave it June 30th. That means I want you out of my property by July 30th. Got any questions? Here's how you can contact me. Any questions? All right. righty. Let's see. So here's the Landlord-Tenant Act. I would encourage you, any prospective potential landlords, read through this act. Everything that I just talked to you about is in this act. I'm not going to take time to go through everything. I'm gonna hit on a couple things here, though I think that's important. Let me see here. Rent. So the law says that in the absence of a rental lease agreement, rent is payable at the time and place by the party unless it's otherwise agreed. Then the terms of the lease is going to be month to month. That's saying if I do not have a lease agreement with this tenant, by default, they're month to month, okay? Month to month. And again, in some places, it can be week to week if it's a boarder room or a house or something like that. But in all cases, all other cases, if I do not have a lease agreement with this person and they're in my property, by default, they're on month-to-month lease. Any questions on that?
What about payment wise, in a sense, if they're paying $1,000 a month, it goes month to month? Do you have it contracted that it goes to $1,150 or anything like that?
So if I want to raise the rent, let's say they lived in there, the lease agreement expired, and now they're living there month to month. Let's say the rent was $1,000. Let's say I let them live there month to month because they say they're going to move out. They're looking for a house. Well, okay, I'll let you stay there a few more months. We'll go month to month. We get to month 5, they have moved out. So I'm going to give them a notice that the rent is going to be increased the following month. So I got to give them 30-day notice if I want to increase the rent. And then they're responsible for that new rent once I give them that 30-day notice.
So it has to be in writing, something sent to them 30 days.
Certified. I got to send it certified again. I got to make sure they got it. I got to post it on the door, the whole 9 yards. I can't send them a text, say, hey, guess what? Next week I'm raising your rent $1,100. Can't do that. Let's see. Anything else in here? Rental agreements. Just talks about some things in the rental agreement. Let's see here. Security deposit talks about misappropriation. Here's the deal. You can go to jail for this. Misappropriation of the security deposit shall be unlawful and punishable by the term of not to exceed 6 months in jail. If you don't put this deposit in a separate account and you start misappropriating, using the money for something else, then you're subject to 6 months in jail. Ooh, Mr. Ray, I didn't know you could go to jail. You sure can.
I'm sorry.
Please mute your phone, please.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Ray?
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, like when they pay you like if you were audited or whatever, when they pay you a security deposit, like you have to be able to show that you took that money and you deposited it in a separate account.
Yes.
Really? Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, you can't put it in your checking account. You can't put it. So what I do, I just keep a large sum of money in this one account, right, all the time. And this is what I call my let's see, it's just reserves, right? I keep all my reserves in that account. So I always have more than enough money in that account to cover all of my deposits for all my properties. So I got 20 properties. So let's just say the average property is 800 rent. 800 times 20. So I got to have $16,000 in that account at all times to cover my property. That make sense?
Yes.
And so I can't spend that money on repairs. I can't spend that money on anything else. I only can have that money there. Now, when they move out, now I can withdraw that money. And if they, let's say they have damages to the property or whatever, and I don't give the deposit back, that deposit becomes mine at that point. I heard a question.
Yeah, Mr. I have a 2-part question. So when you say well, let's just be direct. So when you send certified mail, my lawyer is saying that because they didn't sign, you can't put them out. And so how do you get around them not signing it?
That's not true. So you can still put them out. So they can refuse to sign that, right? But what you can do, number one, you can actually, what I'll do, I'll tape it to the door and take a picture, right, of that door, of that house, so they can see that I put that notice on that door, right? Now, the law says that if I don't serve them, that I can't get my rent, but I can get possession. So he's right in that if they're behind in rent and they don't receive the service, you can't get the rent, but you can get possession of the property. I don't know why they do that. That doesn't make sense to me, but it happens all the time. So if you can't serve them, just know possibly you won't get the back rent, but you will be able to get possession, just showing that you did mail the certified notice. That's why it's important. Let me go back over here to my notice. Oh, okay. It's important that you have these documents to take to court, because when you get this document back, it's gonna show that right here, if they didn't sign right here, then that means, the post office will put something in here saying unable to deliver, refuse to sign, or something. But you'll get this back and you'll take this to court with you, saying, yeah, I tried to serve them, I wasn't able to serve them, but look, Your Honor, I did put a copy on their door. I did take a picture of that, so we know they're notified. In fact, they're here, Your Honor, so we know they got notified. So a lot of times, just them showing up, if they show up, by default, they know the judge says, well, you have been notified because you're here.
Okay, thank you.
That makes sense?
Yes, sir.
So your attorney says you can't kick them out?
No, exactly what my question was, how do I get the money back? But
wow, you can't get here.
That's exactly what happened.
Now, if they show up, Darren, if they show up, you can get your money back. But if they don't show up and you get default judgment, you can't get the money. You only get possession of the property. All right, what else? Any other questions?
This is on I don't know if you're gonna get to this part of the possession. I guess let me know if you are. I was just curious. So the judge says you're gonna get your property back. Yeah. What then happens afterwards with all their stuff if they don't want to move out, or, I mean.
Then we bring the sheriff over there and we escort them from the property. And we lock the property down. If they got stuff in there, that property is locked down until they either pay me my rent, which most times they won't. A lot of times people just abandon the property, leave their stuff there, and they're gone. But if they stay there and the judge gives me possession and I show up out there with the sheriff, they will leave that property. And I will get a chance to change the locks on those doors. So a lot of times the sheriff will give them an opportunity to get out whatever they can get. A lot of times the sheriff will show up, I'll show up with them, and the person will say, I just need to, just give me another day to get out. The sheriff will say, Mr. Ray, give him one more day. And then he'll say, I'll come back with you tomorrow and we'll get them out if they're not out. Okay. So if their stuff is in there, then we got to go back and look at the Landlord-Tenant Act, right? And we got to see what the Landlord-Tenant Act says about abandonment of property. And it's all spelled out in there. Basically, it says if they leave their property there, they abandon, it's clearly abandoned. All I got to do is take pictures of everything. I can have it stored somewhere, and like in a garage, or if I want to, after 30 days, I can throw it all away. But I got to give at least 30 days, give them an opportunity to get their stuff. That means I may have to let them in the property, whatever. But for the most part, whenever I've had this happen to me, they just abandon the property and they just leave a bunch of junk and leave. But if they do have some valuable stuff in there, I am responsible. Let's say they leave TVs, refrigerators, everything in there, then I can't just throw that stuff away. I got to keep it. I got to store it for 30 days. If I don't hear from them 30 days, then I can get rid of it. But what I would do at that point, I take pictures, videotapes of everything so you can see exactly what was in there when I got possession of the property. People go, oh, I had this expensive this expensive that. No, I got a video right here. I got pictures right here. That's what you had in there. Junk. Any other questions? Let's see here. So we talked about that. We talked about that. We got that. Let's see. What am I missing? Any other questions? I showed you that. That's pretty much it, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, now we got to do is go back to the homework. I got to do the homework real quick, and then I'm going to come back and see if we got any more questions. All right. So let's do this. Anybody want to know what